Welcome, everyone, to the annual mock trial scoring attorney training. And we want to just thank you so much. This program could not happen without you volunteering your time and efforts in this regard. And taking this training is a really important part of making sure that the kids who are participating have the best experience possible. So Judge Vinluan and I really enjoy coming here every year and making sure that we go through some of the ways where you all can make sure that you're being the best scoring attorneys possible.
See, I'm sorry. Can you see Judge Cogliati? Do you see the screen where you see Judge Cogliati?
Yes.
Someone, oh,
Well, you see the screen.
Do you see Judge
you
Cogliati?
see me on any of your screens?
Yes.
Yes.
I can see you. We can barely hear you, but we can see you.
Oh,
I'll speak into the microphone when I'm
I can
speaking.
turn that off and have this on.
No, this is fine.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so hopefully you heard my welcome, and I will move along. We do give kind of the same presentation every year, but hopefully it's still a worthwhile experience for those of you who are returning scorers. And in that regard, I'm trying to switch to the next. Oops, there we go. 6 screen. So we just want to start by kind of seeing who we've got here. And I know most of you are on Zoom, but I'll have you unmute one at a time and just let us know if you've scored before for mock trial, either here in Santa Cruz County or someone else. And you don't have to answer all these questions, but just maybe something that you feel is really important, something that you really enjoyed about it, a highlight or two. So let me see. I'm just going to call on people that are on Zoom. Top on my screen is Leslie Harris, who, by the way, was on my jury last week. Thank you very much, Ms. Harris, for serving. So can you just let us know what your prior experience is and in terms of years you've scored and some highlight?
Sure. Yeah, I have been scoring for a number of years, probably close to 8 or 9 years. I think what's, one of the things I like about it the most is you feel like it's such a good use of your time because the students have worked so hard and put on such an incredible, presentation or trial. And, it's great to see them. It's entertaining, and it's also just so fulfilling to see how much they're learning and how good they are at it. And I think it's gotten better as a scorer because of some of the technology. I know it used to be kind of hectic to try to keep track of everybody and get your scores in. And the last couple of years with the technology, it's been so much easier to follow and score. I really appreciated that.
Thank you. That's really great feedback. Certainly, it's a fast-paced trial. It gets done in 2.5 hours. And so one of the points we were going to make tonight was, to be organized and to be there and present. So it's great to know that with the technology, you're able to do that. Let's get a few more people chiming in. I'm going to call on Michael Tunick just because you're on my Zoom twice. So.
Good evening, Your Honor, and also Judge Vinluan. I've been scoring for 7 or 8 years. It's great. Happy to participate. I would appreciate, though, clarity later on in the session as to what kind of comments we're allowed to give as scorers versus not. There are some really experienced scorers. For example, Aaron Muhammad, who competed as a high schooler. I've been a scorer with Aaron. His comments to the participants are always excellent. 2 years ago, I was approached by one of the coaches who asked, "Why aren't you guys giving us comments anymore?" and I had to say, we were asked not to. And so I want to obey whatever the guidance is, but I would appreciate some guidance on what we're allowed to say versus not, please.
Thank you. And we will cover that. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Anybody who's on Zoom who is new to this, who hasn't done it before? Not hearing anyone, so that's great.
I'm quite excited to get in the mix.
Oh.
This is Tanya Rodino. Nice to
Hi.
see you all. Thank you, Judge.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Hopefully you'll pick up some pointers here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is there anyone on the Zoom who has prior experience as a participant in mock trial? I know Mr. Tunick just mentioned Mr. Muhammad. I don't know if he's there, but anyone who was a high school mock trial participant who's now a scoring attorney?
I was. This is Hannah Taylor from the Public Defender's Office.
Oh, thank you.
And I was a student attorney starting in 8th grade and then every year of high school as well.
Oh my gosh. So tell us a little bit about what it was like the first time you walked into the courtroom and how it was for you and your team and what you liked.
It was the first time walking in was definitely daunting. It admittedly, high school experience has been, over 20 years ago. So I don't have the best memory of it in the moment. But by the end of it, by the second, third, fourth year, we were all pretty experienced. We had enough students doing it that we had 3 different levels of teams, like a varsity, a JV, and then a freshman team, basically. So we had that kind of institutional knowledge. And so it went generally pretty well for us.
Very cool. Very cool. And I'm sure there's some people here who have kids who've participated in mock trial. I know I have. So we know the stress they go through and the preparation, the amount of time they do that they put in. So that's why we're all here, is to make sure that they get the greatest experience, because they've put in so much work and it is so scary. So again, just to put up the goals, we really do want to make this a great experience for them, make it a learning experience for them, make it something where they want to come back. So in terms of the comments, and we'll get more into the details, but we really try to keep it as positive and constructive as possible. Make sure, even if there's a big disparity between the teams, that you're giving really what sounds like the same level of compliments to both sides. We do have, teams that struggle to put together a full team every year. And the more that every single individual student who's competing hears the positivity coming from our scoring attorneys when you make your comments at the end, the better chances we have of retaining all those students and getting them to get their friends to do mock trial, and making sure we always have a team ready from each school. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Vinluan to just talk about what you can do to be prepared.
Is it going to cause interference?
No, I was just putting it in now. You can see.
Okay.
Do you
Next.
prefer this format, or do you prefer this format? Do you
That's
prefer
fine.
this? Okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again all for your time. Echo Judge Cogliati in terms of, I know you're all volunteering and how this is important for our community. All right, let me see. So obviously, in terms of score or be prepared, obviously read the material. Obviously the errata, the final errata, those things change that. These kids, obviously, you'll hear it's a constant theme. They are constantly, working hard. I have a child that's in the mock trial, so I've seen so much in terms of her and her teammates working hard, and also their coaches as well. So read the pretrial materials, obviously the witness statements, and then the judge attorney handbook. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but are there any questions at this point regarding that? Okay.
I don't know what
Thank you.
happened.
Okay. Obviously, the time commitment is about 2 to 2.5 hours. Again, so thank you for your time for that. Obviously want you to be prepared, rested, all of that, because these folks, put so much time and effort into it as well. So want you to be at your best as well. So please, again, thank you for that time commitment, but please, we want you all present there and to be totally available when you are scoring. Obviously, these are some thoughts that the students or participants want from you to be fair. Obviously, know the case, especially the modified rules of evidence. It doesn't really need that much explaining, but obviously we do see real trials or college or law school mock trial. Going to be a lot different from here. Again, to underscore what Judge Cogliati was saying, sometimes some schools, they may not have as much resources, or they're just struggling to piece together a team. We want to encourage these. I know a lot of participants are younger in terms of maybe being freshman or sophomore. If we make a really good, or if they get a really good experience, again, they're going to come tell their friends, and then that might start a pipeline for other, younger students. And then maybe it just kind of is a self-generating system where, seniors will be outgoing and trying to get freshmen recruited to participate in this mock trial competition. They are, of course, high schoolers. That's a nice picture. You see Judge Cogliati. I think it's Jason Gill, Mr. Chun. And so good. I think it's probably Watsonville High School. But again, look at the camaraderie, just the environment itself creates, this and hopefully something in the future. So again, they are in high school, 13 to 18 years of age. I know that they started prepping, I think around, some teams are like around Halloween or even September. Yeah, September, October. And so all of them are, very busy. They are in, other extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or other advanced classes. So even some of them have other part-time jobs. So again, they're just putting themselves out there. And I think we realize, or you'll definitely, after hearing us speak today, you realize how much they put into this commitment for mock trial. I think that is, I'll pass it on to Judge Cogliati.
All right, I'm going to just start on some of the general concepts of what your role is as an attorney scorer. I will just go back to, in terms of the preparation, again, it goes so fast. And so having some familiarity with the case is important. And then that attorney and judge handbook, I know SIta is going to, at the end of this, go through some of the really nitty gritty details of scoring, but the more you're familiar with it, the better. So, all right. So you have basically two big things that you're going to be doing here. You're going to be doing the scoring based on the criteria in that handbook. And then your second major role is to provide that positive and constructive feedback to the students at the end. And in some ways, maybe that's the more important of the roles, again, because this is where the kids decide if they're going to come back and do it again. And so really thinking of yourself as someone who's trying to inspire them and motivate them, even if it's to motivate them to do better next time and prepare more next year, to do that in a positive way. So that is one of your main roles. We have 10 golden rules of judging or scoring mock trial. And again, number one is making it positive. If you have a conflict, if you have a kid on a team or anything like that, make sure that SIta knows so you're not set up to score that team. The evidence is limited to the facts in the case packet. Sometimes it feels a little bit awkward, but it's not the kid's fault. So just remember that. In terms of them arguing those evidentiary objections, I know different judges sometimes do it a little bit differently. Some judges might rule immediately, like in a real courtroom. Other judges will give the other side opportunity to respond. Sometimes the first student making the objection wants to respond to the response. So you might see it happen a little bit differently depending on what courtroom you're in. But hopefully we're giving them an opportunity to show what they know through their objections. Make sure you fill out those score sheets. And I was thinking, boy, it takes a lot of organization, but it was nice to hear from Ms. Harris that the new technology makes that even easier. Make your scores independently. So don't look over your friend's shoulder next to you to see what they're doing. And again, in terms of the points, it's not about who wins and loses. It's about how well they perform. And in these cases, those of you who have scored before, you know the pretrial motion is pretty tough for the defense to win usually. And the ultimate case is pretty hard for the prosecution to win usually. So again, it's not about whether they win or lose, whatever the verdict is or the ruling is, that shouldn't figure into your scoring whatsoever. Don't announce your scores. The only time that happens is after they're all added up at the very end, the total scores. And don't lecture them when you're giving them that feedback. They know when they were nervous. They know when they were reading from their notes. They know the things that they need to fix, and they all have coaches, and they'll give them that more, the lecturing type of feedback. So just be positive, be constructive, figure out what things that they did well that you can talk about. I think at the very end, some of them will stick around and ask you for more individual feedback rather than the public feedback. So in terms of Mr. Tunick's question, I would give that little bit of a distinction. When you're announcing in front of everybody in the courtroom and they're all watching you and listening, that's when you absolutely have to be the most positive you can be. At the end, if they stick around and they want to ask you a few questions face to face, that might be a time where you could be a little bit more on the constructive side and say, you could have done this better in this way. Basic rules. This is a bench trial. It's not a jury trial. As you'll hear, they can't be arguing to you. You'll be sitting in the jury box as scoring attorneys, but they've got to be just arguing to the judge. So don't dock them if they argue to the judge. They're not allowed to do any kind of props. They can't do costumes or any kind of makeup. So don't knock them for that, for not having those things. If they do, then I think there is some scoring, and maybe SIta will cover that. The teams are going to be identified by a letter. There'll be team A, team B, etc., not their school name. Be careful not to say, oh, that's Santa Cruz High or anything like that. We're all supposed to pretend that we don't know who they are. The facts are indisputable. The stipulations are indisputable, and they don't get read into the record like they normally would at a trial. They're just in the case materials packet, so you may need to be familiar with those. Once the trial begins, the students can't go and talk to their coaches or anybody in the audience at all. Be aware of that. The witnesses can't testify to each other's testimony. Witnesses can't use notes. Attorneys can use notes, but of course, they'll get better scores if they don't use notes. Each side has to call all the witnesses. You can look into the scoring guide for what happens if that happens. I have not yet seen that happen, but I believe it has happened in the past. So be aware that you've got to give a 0 on those and a 10 to the other one if they don't get called. There is this unfair extrapolation rule. That's the modified rules of evidence, meaning they can't make up a fact based on a fact in the case packet. That would be an unfair thing. There's no recross allowed. They can do direct, or they have to do direct and cross. They're allowed to do redirect. It's not required. It's another place where they can certainly earn points, and any, well-coached team that's going to probably move on to the semifinals and finals is going to have at least a little redirect. Again, the attorneys are allowed to use notes, but score them higher if they don't. There are no objections that are allowed during the pretrial arguments or during the opening statement or closing argument. There's a mandatory 2-point deduction if a team makes an objection during any of those. There's no other motions other than the pretrial motions, admitting exhibits, and motions to strike. So we just really want to emphasize, nobody should feel bullied in any way during this. This should be a good sportsmanship competition. The rules, to the extent there's any interpretation needed, go with your common sense. And, it can happen sometimes, again, where there's two teams that are just really far apart in skill level, that you can get some pretty competitive students who might argue some hyper-technical interpretation of the rule. They're not allowed to do that. So just be aware. It probably won't happen, but it can in this scenario. So when you are scoring, it's going to be on a 1 to 10 scale. Basically, everybody should start with a 5 in your head as you're looking at it and move up or down based on their presentation. Everybody should be scored individually. The pretrial score and the closing arguments will be doubled, so you'll still score them 1 to 10, but in the end, you'll double those scores. And again, just no evaluation of the legal merits, just everybody's performance. Yes. Oh, okay. So SIta's clarifying that when in the doubling of the scores, she does that part. So you still just do it 1 through 10 and she'll do the doubling. All right. So now we're going to go into the different aspects of the trial and Judge Vinluan's going to talk about a little more specifics there. Comment?
Yes, it's a chat.
Something that might improve the program is giving the judging attorneys feedback on their constructive criticism statements made to the teams. We can only learn from our mistakes if we know we made the mistake. Good input, and I think I'll pass that on to the judges that we can be sure to help you out there. But so I've always seen people do such a great job. Thank you for that, though. Judge Vinluan.
Just wanted to pin. Visible. I hope everyone can see Judge Vinluan when he's talking.
Yes, we can see him.
Judge Vinluan.
He looks very nice.
You might not have a good connection. Sorry. Okay, so pretrial motions, my personal favorite, I think, because it's not like this answer and question answer back and forth. It's really, for the judge, you can, I obviously try and limit it. I try and be fair. If I'm going to ask 2 or 3 questions, I want to make sure I ask the other side 2 or 3 questions as well. They have obviously a script, but I don't want to, knock them off of that, but be able to, argue their motion. But you really see some personalities shine in the pretrial motion. So I think for me, that's just my personal favorite. Obviously, they need to have a clear presentation of issues. Use the cases as you have reviewed it. I don't know, there's probably about 13 or 14 cases, and I always do, and I think I learned this from Judge Cogliati, is I'll always the case will even side more I'll have for the DA or the defense, those types of things, and then obviously then you can kind of narrow that down. The respective sides will use those cases and then also try and distinguish maybe the cases that hurt them the most. But that's how I sort of break it down, and then I question the kids about maybe some cases that hurt their case, and then maybe what case really benefits their position. And obviously that solid understanding of legal reasoning and responded well to my questions, and then obviously to have effective rebuttal. But again, I try and temper that, be equal in terms of questions. I don't really want to barrage one side with maybe 7 or 8 questions, use their time, and then, having the other side maybe with only 1 or 2 questions. So I definitely am mindful of that. I think a lot of my other colleagues do that as well, but you can see that. But I want to also let them speak a lot more, and also, again, to show their personalities shine a little bit more with the pretrial motion. All right. Then opening statements, also kind of nice too, because again, there's no question answer. They're coming in, again, a lot of personality, the ones that I've been blessed to sit in front of. They'll give us obviously a case overview, their theme or their theory of the case. And then obviously the witnesses, the burden of proof. Again, we don't want them to use notes. I know they get nervous, so that's going to be a concern for some, but if they can obviously do their opening statements without any notes, that's just going to help them more, especially when you get to the semifinals and finals. You'll see these teams actually not referring to any notes as well, but that would be the ideal standard, is not to have any notes. And then the direct and redirect examinations. This is, again, a lot of I know it's very practiced, but again, to get the specific illicit questions out, and then to also for the redirect to get back. Again, it's not necessary or not mandatory, but again, you'll see some of these teams in the semifinals and finals, they'll definitely take advantage of the redirect examinations because, that's their opportunity, right, to shine. Of course, proper phrasing, respond properly to objections, effective objections made, and then good use of time. Cross-examination, my favorite as well in terms of the examinations themselves, effective objections, narrowing questions, responding to those objections. I tend to, and I think a lot of my colleagues do too, is when I get an objection, I don't just say sustained or overruled. I just go back to the other side and say, what's your position or why is that relevant to see them? So that way it's engaging for both sides and also allows them to think on their feet, not just cutting them off and just saying sustained or overruled. And witnesses, of course, they want to be believable. We can't use props like we said, but obviously they'll be coming in suits. I always think it's the most adorable thing when maybe, a male will come in and he doesn't have a suit and he maybe borrows his dad's suit and maybe it's like 2 sizes big. But I just think that that's nice. I got to watch myself because I don't want to like give them, extra credit in my mind. But I think it's just amazing when they do get up and that's how much importance this is to them is, they have to use, clothes that maybe they're borrowing from a dad or a relative. But again, they always look really dapper. I'm really impressed. Always well prepared. Obviously responding to the questions. Again, they've worked so hard, so you'll be surprised. Many of them will be very ready, even for the cross-examination. Obviously the unreasonable inferences or the blanking, what is it? The unfair extrapolation. Obviously, some responses could be, it's a fair extrapolation, right? It's just creating facts where one side would get an advantage. That's when we have to, deduct or get points against them. But so as the judge are sitting on that, I'll have to see, obviously that entails knowing your facts really well, because it could be a very fair extrapolation and just be fine where it's not giving an advantage to one side or the other. Again, no notes and being spontaneous and not rehearsing it. And then we'll get into the no filibustering. Again, that's using people's times. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You can generally see what that's going on. Maybe even a side will bring that to bring it to our attention. But that has been used in the past. I haven't seen it that often. I've heard about it where they're really trying to drain the other team's time. So we'll just be cognizant of that. And then closing arguments, again, a lot of personality comes in. It's not question or answer. They're incorporating examples from the actual trial. Again, these will be some of I hope most of the teams will do this, but definitely when you get to the semifinals and finals, they'll be doing that, not referencing statements or evidence not admitted at trial. Obviously, that will be points deducted if they do that. And then organized, well-reasoned, effective rebuttal, and of course, always referring back to the law. Clerks is, again, so these are the ones that are with the timing. And then we'll have a score, and I'll refer to that after in terms of the scoring for the attorneys and of course the clerks. But again, they need to be present and punctual. Their big thing is not to have any disruptions or delays, just to advise their teams how much time they have, to be professional without attracting any unnecessary attention, and then properly using verbal and written time warnings. And I think their maximum score is 5 points. So we'll go over that as well. Then the bailiff also being present and punctual. The other thing is obviously to swear in witnesses, but not to have any unnecessary disruptions or delays. Again, being professional and then following the script. And that is also maximum of 5 points. So we can go over, what that entail. That would be an excellent score versus, 1 would be below average. And then of course the team presentation, to be courteous, clear and distinct. Obviously we want to underscore good sportsmanship. That's what this is all about, right? The team, and then also having friendly competition. And then witnesses performed in sync with their attorneys. Again, that goes to the hard work and the prep that they've done. And then the attorneys displayed knowledge of the law and cooperation and teamwork. And then, the specific guidelines, the ones I was referring to is on page 26 to 29. Again, with the attorneys, the highest scores you could give is a 9 or 10, which would be excellent. And then the ones, below average would be 1 and 2. Witnesses as well, highest score would be 10 or a 9. And then it also goes down to 1 or 2 for below average. And then the clerks and bailiffs would be maximum score of 5. Obviously, the lowest score would be 1. And then participation and team presentation, highest score could be 10 or 9. And then below average is a 1.
All right, so the final part of the presentation that we like to go over every year is about implicit bias. What are the factors that we forget to be aware of that really do influence our judgment and, could result in a 1 or 2 point deduction, but we're not even aware of it? I mean, last year in the finals, the teams tied. It was very difficult. I had to make the final decision, but you think about how 1 point could make a difference in a team's how they do. And so making sure that you eliminate as best you can any factor that isn't directly related to how well they're doing here in mock trial. So you got to think about how we see people, how we hear people, and what do we feel as we're looking at them and hearing them. Do we see them all the same? Do we find a more articulate student to be better, even if maybe they don't know the law as well? What do we see when we look at people and how they're dressed and what their skin color is and what their gender is and what their gender identity is? Here we just have a couple pictures and, are you looking at them and are you aware of your initial reaction when you look at people of different races, genders, gender identities, people with disabilities, things like that? Is somebody who's a little less traditional looking than what you might see in a normal courtroom. A lot of you are in court every day. I know, especially in civil court, a lot of the attorneys look kind of the same. There's kind of a uniform. These students are going to come in and they're not going to look like that. Are you going to be able to be aware and put aside those judgments about them not looking like the attorneys you're used to seeing in order to be as fair as you possibly can to them? Just kind of going through some of the photos that I believe Judge Salazar put together for this many years ago, and just to have you think when you take a look at the photo again, what's your initial reaction? Making sure that every student gets your full and fair judgment. Technology has been an issue. One or 2 years during COVID, we had schools that just didn't have the same access to technology as others, even with being in person, some of their preparation, what they've had access to in terms of coaches, teachers. I mean, there's a big variety here. There are some schools that come in and they've got 3-4 attorney coaches, and they've got a dedicated teacher coach who's maybe paid to do the mock trial. And then we have other schools that have maybe 1 part-time attorney coach and 1 teacher who's, been dragged into it and doesn't have a whole lot of time. So there's a lot of things going in for these students that really don't make it fair in the way they come into the courtroom. And that makes it that much more important that what we're looking at is we're looking at them with the fairness and with the compassion for, how they got there and what it's taken for them to get there. So, we've all been trained about implicit bias over and over and over. We should all be aware of it, but it's always so good to just be reminded. We don't see and hear people the same, have been conditioned to prejudge people just by the way we've lived in life and the things we've been exposed to and media. So you've got to recognize that if you want to treat the students fairly. Printed out the implicit bias instruction that's in the cases, and I think it's really, really helpful to just remind everybody of. Our brains help us navigate and respond quickly to events by grouping and categorizing people, places, and things. These mental shortcuts are helpful in some situations. but in the courtroom, they may lead to biased decision-making. If you think about it, it's not because we're bad people. It's not because of anything necessarily other than our brains taking shortcuts and putting people in groups and categories. So the more we're just aware that that happens unintentionally inside us, the more we can make sure to look at it, recognize it, and move it aside so we can make sure we're giving these students absolute fair scoring. One of the things I really always think about with implicit bias is it's not just about who is in your out group, who are the people that don't look like you or act like you or didn't grow up like you. It's the people that are in your in group. You've got to make sure that you're also not, rewarding those people that, oh, that kid reminds me of me when I was that age. I'm going to like bump them up a little bit. And again, you wouldn't do that consciously, but there might be that unconsciousness that you do when someone is similar to you or you identify with someone. So just being aware of all this will help you all be better scoring attorneys. So what are some things you can do to make sure you're being fair? There's not a lot of time, but to the best of your ability, reflect carefully and thoughtfully each time you're about to put the score down. Think about why you're giving that score and look at it. Is it biased in any way? Consider whether your initial impression of one of the students is the same after you've heard them give their closing argument, make their pretrial motion, conduct their examination, or be a witness. Think about whether that impression would be different if they were of a different gender, age, race, religion, sexual orientation, whatever it is. Think about them as individuals and do your best to be responsible with your unbiased scoring. So that's about all we have. I'm going to turn it over to SIta to give you some of the real technical scoring stuff, but I just want to say thank you once again. I don't know if we're going to address everybody. We may have time for questions at some point, but just thank you.
Questions now.
Well, why don't you go? Because I think there'll be some questions related to your part of the presentation. All right. Anyway, thank you for listening to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that presentation. I know you guys have a very busy schedule and you still come here every year and do this training with us. So I'm really thankful. It's gonna open. Just give me 1 second. Is it okay to share screen or would you like to talk to them or it's okay? Hello, everyone. My name is SIta Kaimal. I have been the mock trial coordinator for the past 3 years. And I do many other events like spelling bee, but this is the most unpredictable event. You never know. Every year throws in a surprise. Sometimes it's a wrench, sometimes it's a pleasant surprise. And you never know what to expect each year. So it's a unique one. And thank you so much for volunteering your time and helping the students of our community, because without scoring attorneys, we cannot run this competition without judges, because you guys judge the students. So be really thankful for your time. Yeah, the mock trial happens every year in February. So it starts next week, every Tuesday and Thursday. This year we're doing it at the Santa Cruz Courthouse because of the constructions. Watsonville was not an option this year. We start around 5:30 and we do, it goes on for about 2 hours, as the judges mentioned. Sometimes it's done by 7:15, but max by 7:30 should be done. We used to do 2 rounds each night, which was very hectic for everyone involved. So now we do only 1 round each night. And we had 8 teams competing this year, but one of them had to drop out because of lack of participation. So we have 7 teams, but we are trying to get the team that dropped out to combine with one of the existing teams so the students can still compete this year. I'm hoping they will get back to whether they are still competing. So I'm hoping those students get to compete as well, but they'll compete as a combined team. But again, they'll have one team code, so you won't know. But hopefully everyone who wanted to participate is participating. But because we have 7 teams instead of 8, that means that we would have a substitute team going against one of the teams in one of the trials. And so far we have 2.5. The reason I said half is one of the schools has, as you mentioned, they do so many extracurricular activities. And they have this big event going on next week, so they can only substitute for the second week. So depending on whether there's a substitute available, that is, depends on which side needs a substitute, we might have a situation in which there is a forfeit win because there is no substitute available, in which case I'll let you guys, the people on that panel, the attorneys on that panel, I will let them know in advance that that trial is canceled. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but it did happen last year where a team withdrew during the competition and then we were looking for substitutes in the last minute. And sometimes there was a competition and sometimes there was a forfeit win. So it's something we can't control. It depends on the students' availability. They are not scored. The substitutes are not scored, but the team they're competing against is scored as a proper team. No, they will again be going by a code, but we'll let you know that you don't score team A, but you score team B. So you only have to score one of the sides. And easier. But unless we do that, we cannot have 8 teams going against. Oh, is that better? Can you hear me better now? It can be louder.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Again, the rules are set by Teach Democracy, which is the institution that releases the case, sets all the rules every year. They send out all the materials that we send out to the schools in September, and we follow all the guidelines that they provide. As the judge mentioned, in my volunteer form, I had requested to please let me know if you have any conflict of interest, especially if you have a family member attending, or sometimes you work very closely with a coach of the team, and that might be a conflict of interest. So I have made sure that you are not judging any of those teams. But if something comes up, like you notice something now, just let me know and I can shift you to a different panel. Again, as we mentioned, they're only identified by code. We also ask them not to wear any school colors or any letters. Even the spectators are asked not to come in any school paraphernalia so that there's no identification. We don't want any bias in any way. Sorry. I have sent you all the materials, like the final errata came out. So I sent you the updated case packet. I will send it again tomorrow along with the recording. So you have like a week before the competition. All the materials will be sent to you by email. Some attorneys requested for hard copies, which I mailed to them. If you need a hard copy, please let me know and I'll mail it to you. I hope you get it before the trial, but otherwise people generally prefer soft copies because it's about 150 pages. I will email you the day before the competition, and I will email you the score sheet link and all the important links you need on the day of the competition as well. You'll be getting a lot of emails from me. I'm so sorry, but I have sent you calendar invites. All this is so that you are there on time and we can start the competition on time. So like last year, we have been approved as an MCLE provider. So when you come in, please make sure you come into Department 2 and sign the official record of attendance. And that way I can send that information to them. And it's provided for all scoring attorney and coaching attorneys who are doing the first 4 rounds, rounds 1 to 4. And I will be sending you an evaluation form. So please fill it and send it back to me, because I need to submit that to the state bar as well. It's only, I can send you the certificate only on getting the evaluation form back to me. So please make sure you send me the evaluation form. Yes. So I need to submit the record of attendance and the evaluation form to the state bar for you to be approved for those credits. Let's doing this. We request you to get a personal device like a laptop or a tablet that has a big enough screens, because you'll be scoring about 32 to 34 times. Like you have to put your scores into different parts of the Google form, and having a wider screen than a phone would really help. If you prefer doing it on a score sheet and then transferring it later, a lot of attorneys prefer doing that, because then you can just focus on the trial and just use the paper score sheet, which I provide in your folders. You could do that and just put all the scores in the end, as long as you send me the scores before you leave the courthouse, because my nighttime routine is I sit and calculate all the scores that night or first thing next morning, and then send the scores to the students first thing in the morning. So I really need the scores that night. So if you can come in by 5, that would be great, because we'll have food, pizza, salad, everything. And also it's a great time to just meet your peers, meet the judges. It's a good time for you to just relax and mingle. Also, we would prefer you kind of get to the courtroom by 5:20, so you have enough time to log in. It's the open Wi-Fi court guest, so it's easy for you to get into the Wi-Fi. We have a COE volunteer in every room, and they will help you if you have any issues logging in. If you have issues and it's not working out, just use the paper score sheet, and I can input it for you. We prefer not to touch the scores in any way, but if it's not working out for you, I can input it for you. Also, if you don't have a device, I can get you a Chromebook. It's not a fun device, but that's what COE has to provide. So if you don't have a device, I can get a Chromebook for any attorney who needs it. I will, when you come in, I give you a folder similar to this. Most people have seen this. We have the score sheet, the evaluation criteria that Judge Vinluan just went through, the guidelines for scoring. So these are all cheat sheets for you to use right then. It also has a summary of evidence, like allowable evidence. The first 4 rounds have a award nominations sheet. You can do this online, or you could do it on the paper, and I would input the award nominations. We highly encourage you to do this. I'll be talking more about it in the next slides, how to log in to the Wi-Fi, and some blank paper for your notes. So I will give this to all of you when you come in. We try to reuse. So if you are not using any of these sheets, please consider giving it back to me, and I can use it for the future rounds. This is from last year, so I try to use it year after year. During the competition, if they, obviously we start at 5:30, but if the team doesn't arrive till 6, they forfeit, and the other team gets an automatic win. The bailiff will hand you the character rosters for both teams and at the start of the trial. And again, if you use a paper score sheet, please give it to me. Do not give it to the bailiff or any student. And there are no teachers. Just give it directly to me, and I can input the scores for you after verifying them. All the roles are gender neutral. So when the name might sound that it's it might be a girl's name or a boy's name, but they're all gender neutral. So that's another rule that's in the book. Bailiff and clerk, judge has already covered that. For the past few years, we have been having artists and journalists. These are not included in the maximum allowed composition of the team, which is 25. These are students who sit in the jury box, and it's only for the first 2 rounds. The first round is a practice round. The second round is the final round. We have asked them not to sit anywhere near you. They don't interact with you. They just get their own like sketch pad or they take their notes, and we judge them. The COE staff judges them, so you don't have to worry about them. But if you're wondering what's a student doing in the jury box, it's probably because they're an artist or a journalist, and they get to go to the state. The top 2 get to go to the state. So there haven't been many major rule updates this year. It's been pretty much same as last year. As every year, Santa Cruz mock trial, the semifinals is always an elimination round. The second rule is basically they included an extra word in there. It's basically saying that everyone needs to be show courtesy and respect for everyone involved. I don't want to go through the whole thing. That's the gist of it. And the third rule change that they had was the artist cannot take photos during the trial to reference their sketch, and no devices are allowed. But I think something must have happened where a student tried to do this, which is why they've specified it in the rules this year. And the evaluation criteria and scoring guidelines have been made. They didn't make any changes to it, but they just made it easy to read. So it's like the metrics is very clearly explained, but it's the same evaluation guideline and scoring is the same thing as previous years. So Judge Cogliati did go through the rules. These are just the rules regarding communications. And the only reason I put this here is because they lose points if they violate any of these rules. And that is, they're not allowed, the teachers, attorneys, coaches, and substitutes are not allowed to communicate with the teams, even via note or signaling or any of those things. The attorneys and witnesses are not allowed to address the scoring attorneys. As Judge Cogliati said, it's a bench trial. So they do not address you, they only address the judge. And the trial attorney is not allowed to, they're allowed to communicate, the trial attorneys are allowed to communicate, but it shouldn't be disruptive. And the same goes for the defendant and the defending attorney, but it should not be disruptive. Sorry, there's some problem with. The pre-trial attorney cannot sit with the trial attorneys, and they cannot communicate with them once their part is done. They move back, they normally go and sit with the team. And once the trial has begun, there should be no communication with the team members. And if any of these rules are violated, there is a 5-point deduction. So it's a major violation. So that's why we let all the attorneys know every year, even though it's the same rules. Now, as I mentioned, most of you have done this scoring electronically. It's very easy. It just follows the same pattern as the score sheet. And if you have any issues, just use the paper score sheet. We can always go back to the electronic score sheet so you can focus on the trial. I'll be sending you the score sheet link and the award nomination link on the day of the trial, so it's easy for you to find. It's on top of your inbox. Yeah, you can refer to the guidelines to score. For the past few years, we've been noticing like the MVP announcement really works well because it kind of builds a good sportsmanship, and it lightens the mood. And we are encouraging judges to ask both team captains to take the time, like they confer, and they nominate an MVP from the opposing team. So if I will be putting that in all my communication to the presiders, but if you happen to have a meeting with them, just mention that we are trying to bring this tradition back because we got a lot of positive feedback about the MVP announcements. So we are trying to bring that back. So the award nomination form, again, as there was a question about comments, it would be great to get these comments is what brings the students back. And we send every comment that you send to the students and anonymously. And some of these comments are also used during the the finals, like in the presentation. And that really helps the students. They feel very proud of the fact that they put in so many hours. So please put in the comments if you feel any team or if any student has done exceptionally well, use the award nomination sheet. You don't have to nominate every student, just the ones that you think has done really well, just put a note and what is the comment that you have for the student. All this communication will be sent to them. And we tally the award nominations after the 4th round and then let the teams know beforehand so they can come in for the finals to accept the awards. Last year, we started the Paul Marigonda Trial Award, Mock Trial Award, and it has been really popular because the award is trying to put forward his energy and his commitment to everything he took forward, that he would give his 100% to everything. So if you feel a student or a team has really done that, please nominate students or the team for the Paul Marigonda Award. Last year, PV High School won this award. They had participated for the first time with newbies and they did exceptionally well. And they were so proud to collect this award. And it's nominated by like all the scoring attorneys, coaches, teachers, the Trial Association members, and it's a collective. The Trial Association collects all the entries for the award and they tally it and they declare the award. So that is also given out on the final day in the award ceremony. Thank you so much for coming and going through our training. If you have any questions, I'm going to open the Zoom room and also the attorneys here can ask the questions. Please unmute yourself if you're on Zoom and if you have a question. They did an exceptional job. It's too late at night. But if you have a question, my phone number is on all my emails. You can email me. I check my emails obsessively during this time. So just feel free to let me know. It would be great if you could let me know when I email you the day before the competition, if you can just give me a yes, I'll be there. In case you have not confirmed on the Google Calendar I send, then that just makes my life easier and just makes it easier to schedule everything. So I'm really sorry. The emails will stop by the 20th, and then you'll not hear from me till like October. But if you have any questions, please feel free to raise a hand, just unmute.
I don't actually have a question. I have more of a comment. I don't know how you do it, SIta, but you are very impressive when you put this stuff together. I mean, I did this last year and it went off without a hitch, and there were 5 million mechanisms working at the same time. And you were like on top of every single one of them. I don't know if anyone ever tells you that you're doing a fabulous job, but in case you never do, I just want you to know, guess what? You're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a question. I find the biggest challenge at the end, after doing the scores, trying to have the time to nominate a student and put in some good commentary and remarks about it. So I'm just trying to remember and know how we can have sufficient time, especially now that there's only one trial. I mean, can we come back to Department 2 and do that, or?
So you can send the award nominations even at the next day. It's not like the score sheet that we needed that night. You can send the award nominations to me anytime before the 13th of Feb. And I tally them only after the 13th of Feb. So that's why the paper sheet helps you to make rough notes. If you think that you want to add them yourself later, then you could do it anytime before the end of round 4, which is on the 13th. Or you could hand me your nomination sheet and I'll try my best to decipher it and put it in. And so there is no rush. And even if you have scored on the 4th of Feb, you can send me the nominations on the 13th of Feb or any time between that.
And we're not limited to nominating only one person, one team, or one thing,
No,
right?
you can nominate
It's like
as
every
many
time
as
you come out and judge, you're allowed to nominate anyone you want as often as you want, right?
Yes, you can. Because there were some students who got nominated so many times. That's how they win the award, because everyone felt that they did an exceptional job. So please nominate as many or as few as you feel deserve it. Any more questions? We have a lot of food here, which I'm going to make all of we have only a few attorneys here, so they're going to take home a lot of food here. But I next time consider coming in person, and then we can make a party out of it.
And SIta told me, Ms. Hess, that your MCLE for the state bar is going to go in right away, since you're a nice compliment to SIta. So, just
Well,
kidding.
that helps. Woohoo!
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Thanks.